Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Yesterday's reshuffle of Prime Minister Modi's government, followed by the late-night allocation of portfolios, amounts to a significant and substantial change both in personnel and effectiveness. No one was dropped, no one was promoted, but several have lost portfolios and 21 new ministers have been brought in. So tonight in a special one-hour episode, what are the main messages this reshuffle and expansion sends out? Has Mr. Modi found the right defence and railway ministers? Has he gambled with other appointments? And with the Shiv Sena sulking, is his oldest ally about to break with him? Those are the questions we shall answer today. And now joining me to discuss yesterday's substantial and significant government changes is the former editor of The Hindu and now a senior fellow of Shivnadar University, Siddharth Varadarajan, the well-known Asian Age columnist Ashok Malik, the Bombay-based leading commentator Siddharth Bhatia, Congress spokesperson and MP Abhishek Singhvi, and BJP spokesperson Siddharth Nath Singh. Gentlemen, let's start with a few general questions to try and establish the flavour of what's happened before we come to questions about specific appointments and changes. Siddharth Varadarajan, would you accept that with 4 new cabinet ministers, 3 new ministers of state with independent charge and 14 ministers of state, this is a substantial reshuffle which could significantly change both the face as well as the perceived performance of this government?
You know, I think when Mr. Modi was sworn in May, he made rather a fetish out of having a small-sized cabinet. And I recall saying on your show, or perhaps somewhere else, that the size of his government was not tenable, that this was an artificial squeezing that he was trying to do to look different from the previous government, and that somehow this was not sustainable. I think we've wasted the last 5 months with ministers doubling and tripling with portfolios, and sooner or later something had to give. I think Mr. Modi has realized, I wish he had done this 3-4 months earlier, I wish he'd done it on day one, so that you have a team that is large enough to govern a country and an economy that is as complex as that of India's. And you know, I wish he hadn't gone for the optics of trying to have a very lean and mean government, you know, this phrase of less government, more governance, etc., etc. I think what you have now is something that looks more viable. I think it gives the government a fighting chance to implement its ambitious agenda in a way in which Mr. Modi has been unable to do so in the last 5.5 months. Or, you know,
Ashok Malik, if you look at people like Manohar Parrikar, Suresh Prabhu, Jayant Sinha and Mahesh Sharma, and perhaps add to that mix Rajiv Pratap Rudy, Raghavendra Singh Rathore and Y.S. Chaudhary, one gets the impression that the Prime Minister has opted for merit, and prima facie this should make the government's performance more effective and its implementation of policies swifter and smoother. But is that an over-reading or is that an accurate conclusion?
Karan, every ministry making exercise is an exercise in political messaging as well as a search for administrative talent. The people you mentioned are essentially people from the educated middle classes who come into politics. Some are proven administrators, some are very new. Rajavardhan Rathore is an ex-army officer and an ex-Olympic silver medalist in shooting. But we don't know much about his administrative experience. I'm sure he'll do well and I hope he does well. But we cannot decide right now that his is a meritorious appointment, to be fair. And the appointment of somebody who may not speak English and may come from a rural background in Bihar is not a meritorious appointment. Politics is a mix of, as I said, looking for talent as well as looking for MPs who can make that shift from grassroots politics, from electoral politics to governance behind a desk. And this exercise has been quite similar. It's been a mix of many messages.
All right, that's very interesting. Siddharth Varadarajan says that this size and expansion should have happened 2, 3, 4 months ago, maybe at the very outset. And Ashok Malik says that, in fact, the new appointees need to prove themselves before we decide they've actually been appointed on merit. Siddharth Bhatia, another message from this reshuffle is that the BJP seems to be becoming tougher with its allies. The Shiv Sena has clearly and fairly definitely been put in its place, but many people believe that in fact the induction of Ram Shankar Khateria and Vijay Sampla also is a clear message to the Akali Dal. Do you think that in fact Mr. Modi's allies are going to be sitting up somewhat more straight than they have earlier on and a little concerned and perturbed?
You know, this impression has been gaining ground for the past few months. The Shiv Sena was the most obvious example because there was a crunch moment. The elections came and they broke up. The Akalis have been feeling very, very restive. Taking Suresh Prabhu, for example, was a clear message to the Shiv Sena that whether we join you or you join us and we become partners, it doesn't matter. We want this man, and we know that he is somebody whom the Shiv Sena almost considers persona non grata. He's more or less out, but I like him, so I'm going to get him. So on two levels, the message has gone out. You can join us in Maharashtra and you join us on our terms, but at the center we want some people, and Suresh Prabhu is one of them, and he will add a lot of technocratic merit and other things, integrity to the cabinet, so we are going to take him. So this is a double-edged message to them. In Punjab, a lot more developments are taking place and the Akalis are feeling restive, but the message has gone out that this is a BJP government, and at the state level too, you have to start making adjustments.
There is, however, Siddharthnath Singh, another message that is a lot more disquieting and a lot less reassuring, and it seems to be an apparent unconcern for corruption and criminal charges or cases, and that seems to undermine Mr. Modi's commitment to clean government. For instance, Ram Shankar Katheria has in his own affidavit admitted to 23 criminal cases, including attempt to murder, forgery, cheating. And this is on top of the so-called 13 other ministers who are supposed to face charges. In fact, the Association for Democratic Reforms now says that 31% of the Council of Ministers faces criminal charges of one sort or another. Doesn't that worry you a little?
Well, Karan, I'm sitting in Calcutta, and thank God I'm not a member of parliament. Then it would have been 31, not 31, 32. Because in Calcutta, in West Bengal, I have 4 FIRs against me. And if you go down to Allahabad, where that's my area, political area where I've worked hard, and that is about 8 or 9 of them there. So I don't know how you will judge me whether I'm a criminal with a background of some murders or shoplifting or somebody, dacoity, or a criminal because that I have looted some bank or something like that. I don't think you're going to judge me from that. So these are political cases, and let me be honest, this is something which is not pertaining to only BJP, but there are other political parties, and this is a very serious question. Those who are in power in the respective state, they try to misuse it. So therefore, I won't take much notice of it when the transparency of media and the fourth pillar is so high that one should be worried about it.
Can I put this to you? I accept that political parties as vendetta foist false charges on each other. That is a common practice. But I'm talking about Ram Shankar Katheria facing attempt to murder. Surely attempt to murder is not a politically foisted charge. There must be more substance to it.
Well, it is. Certainly. I'll tell you. In a typical case where I am concerned, I had a political rally where I pushed because we were being stopped, and there the case has been registered as attempt to murder. What do? It was a dharna which I was organizing, and I was part and I was leading it. So Karan, you need to come down to where what happens on political platform, and then you will understand these things can be created. So let's not give too much of weightage and then say, oh, it makes a good news.
All right.
So let's play it. It doesn't happen that way.
I'll accept your word. What you're basically saying, and perhaps we should all remember this, is politics is not necessarily a nice profession, and politicians are not always very nice people either. Let's move on, and let's come, gentlemen, to specific appointments. Abhishek Singhvi, the media and a lot of people in civil society are very impressed by the fact that Manohar Parrikar is the new defense minister, Suresh Prabhu the new railways minister. The media and a lot of civil society feels these are the right people for these critical challenges. How does Congress respond to those two appointments in particular?
Two general comments first before I answer your question, Karan. One is that in the ultimate analysis, it's invidious to talk of individuals in that sense. The prerogative is of the Prime Minister, and I think he does have the right to appoint those he wants, and we don't want to quibble about it. The First general point is that when so much hoopla was made about maximum governance and minimum government, today the number is exactly the same as the UPA initially had. After a few months, the Prime Minister has the same number. As far as the two names you've taken, I know one personally, and I think he seems to be a very capable, competent person, Mr. Suresh Prabhu. The other one has a good image, and we wish them well. I don't think it's a job of the opposition party to criticize for the sake of criticism. But the point is, Karan, that howsoever good you are, or howsoever good an image you have, we will have to ultimately judge you on the performance. Now, certainly Mr. Suresh Prabhu, whom I have had the privilege of leading in a parliamentary delegation, is a man of ideas and is very dynamic and hardworking. Mr. Manohar Parrikar, whom I don't know, has a good reputation, and I think if they do good for the country, it will make all of us happy.
All right.
But all I am saying is that Mr. Modi himself has shown for the last 5 months that he is excellent in articulating, conveying and making ideas and promises. The implementation, there is a hiatus, a huge hiatus. I just hope that the same syndrome doesn't befall these two new esteemed colleagues of his.
Let me just correct one little point you made. In fact, Mr. Modi's cabinet after the expansion is now at 66. That's in fact, to be honest, the entire Council of Ministers. Dr. Manmohan Singh, when he demitted, was somewhere at 77. So there's still a substantial difference. It's not at the same size as yet.
No, I'm talking when we started. I'm sorry. When we started, the first cabinet was 66.
Very quickly, Siddhartha Singh, I can see your finger going up. Very quickly, you want to say something. Go ahead.
Karan, I just want to make a simple point to Abhishek ji, is that, look, it is never the numbers which were being spoken about. It is minimum governance means not more, 100 of GOMs not to take a decision or creating more committees and coming in between in taking a decision which was to be more transparent and allowing the normal market to play it. So that was the idea of minimum governance rather than the numbers which you are going to take it. Number is never a question. There is an outer limit of 79 Council of Ministers which need to be there. You are within your right as the Prime Minister to have 79 or not to have 79.
Let's not quarrel over numbers. Gentlemen, this is not going to become a quarrel between the two of you. No, I am not making this a quarrel between the two of you, much as you may wish to do that. I'll just simply point out, Mr. Siddhartha Singh, that when in fact you came out with a Council of Ministers of just 44, your own ministers parroted. One of them, if I recall correctly, was Ravi Shankar Prasad, that this was proof of minimum governance, minimum government, maximum governance. At that point, he translated it in those ways.
Karan, you're misreading it. What Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad said, with this, we are limiting the process of taking a decision.
All right.
So that the decisions go quickly. So these ministries have been integrated.
All right. You have a right to reinterpret your minister. He is your minister.
Realize that no, this will not work. So let's expand it.
Let's move on. You have a right to reinterpret your minister if you want. I think the press understood him very differently, and that is the point I'm really making. Sarvadarajan, there's much speculation why Sadanand Gowda was moved from railways. Most people in the press have concluded that he was ineffective and unequal to the challenge of handling a ministry for which Mr. Modi has some of the most ambitious plans. Do you go with that, or are you accepting the Congress line put out by Ajay Markan that in fact he's been shifted because his wealth increased over 100-fold in just 3 months?
No, I think I would say that my own impression is that Mr. Gowda, like many other ministers incidentally, has proved ineffective in transforming many of the promises that Mr. Modi made during the campaign and subsequently into reality. And now 4.5, 5 months is an ample amount of time for anybody to be judged. And the railways, as a key infrastructure ministry, is meant to occupy a central position in Mr. Modi's economic plan. And it's very clear that it was business as usual, essentially. I mean, we didn't have those new trains that we saw with Mamta and others, but there was nothing that was really moving on the ground. But the same is true for many other ministries. And I think that Mr. Prabhu, the choice of Mr. Prabhu is undoubtedly a good one, because during the Vajpayee government, 98 to 2004, Mr. Prabhu was one of those ministers who earned a reputation for thinking out of the box, for working hard, for implementing difficult decisions. And I suspect that's why Mr. Modi has chosen him for this particular portfolio. I'm a bit mystified about law and governance.
Let's come to we'll come to that. Hang on. Let's take it one at a time. I'll come to law and governance in a moment's time. Ashok Malik, why do you think Harshvardhan lost health? Almost everyone I've spoken to was impressed by the preparations he made to handle Ebola if Ebola were to come to India. So do you accept the argument being put out in today's Indian Express that his strong anti-tobacco line offended the tobacco lobby in Gujarat, which is A, very powerful, and B, allegedly close to Mr. Modi?
You know, it sounds very conspiratorial, to be honest with you, because if Mr. Modi did indeed feel Harshvardhan was overreaching himself, I'm sure he could have had a private conversation with him. I would rather go with the simpler explanation that Mr. Harshvardhan has been given a less taxing portfolio pending his move to Delhi as possible Chief Minister should the BJP win the election. He certainly did a very good job as Health Minister. He impressed a lot of people, including people in the government I've spoken to. So I don't think it was his performance that was really the issue. Because he was always seen as someone from a health background who had worked on, say, polio in the past, even before he became minister, and was seen as very good with and very suited to this portfolio. I would rather see it in the context of the upcoming Delhi elections.
Okay. I saw your figure going up, Abhishek Singhvi. Do you want to make a comment about Harshvardhan losing health? Because if you do, come in at this point. Otherwise, I'll come to you later on.
I must. I'm glad you asked me, Karan. I must express a certain amount of surprise because he's supposed to be one of those people with a good image in Delhi, and this is a clear divestiture and demotion. There is no clear reason emerging, but what you have just mentioned has been talked about not only the last 2 or 3 days but earlier as well. And I hope to God that is not the reason, because that is clearly a public interest stand he would be taking. And if that is linked to the Gujarat reason you mentioned, it would be something very serious.
Okay.
I don't have any credible evidence to go on that, but certainly this is what is being heard because A, in Delhi and with the Delhi elections, and B, with his relatively good image, it's clearly a surprise move.
Okay. Let me bring in Siddharthnath Singh at that point. There's a certain amount of concern, Mr. Siddharthnath Singh, that in fact Harshvardhan has been moved for what one might call less than acceptable reasons. That he took a strong anti-tobacco line and the tobacco lobby, which is strong in Gujarat, objected. They had a word with Mr. Modi, and a man doing a good job was moved out for the wrong reason. How do you respond to that belief?
Well, rumors can be there and the media can speculate on it, but certainly when I look at the Health Ministry and the Science and Technology Ministry, let me be honest, the way if India has to move in a different league, Science and Technology Ministry will be definitely playing a more important role. I don't say the Health Ministry is less important, but certainly Science and Technology is a more important role.
Okay.
And therefore, a capable minister with an honest, political track record has been given with a higher responsibility. That's how I will take, because India has to move into a different league and not live in 1970s or 1980s.
I take it.
Where
Fine.
the Health Ministry was definitely a predominant ministry.
All right. Siddharth Bhatia, another minister who seems to have shrunk, if I can so phrase it, is in fact General V.K. Singh. He's lost independent charge of the Northeast, which is clearly an area of priority for this government, and he's been left with the lesser and certainly less important Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Now, has he suffered because of his indiscreet comments about the new army chief? Or has he suffered because one of his political aides, a gentleman called Shambhu Prasad Singh, is involved in FIRs and other questions over the high altitude equipment case?
Karan, I'm sorry, you'll have to go through the question again, because it's very muffled and it broke in the middle.
What I was saying is another minister who shrunk is General V.K. Singh. He's lost independent charge of the Northeast, which is a priority area for this government, and he's been left with the lesser Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Now, has he suffered because of his indiscreet comments about the new army chief, or possibly as well as because his political aide, a gentleman called Shambhu Prasad Singh, is involved in an FIR in the high altitude equipment case?
Well, clearly, I think putting V.K. Singh itself was, according to me, a mistake, because he was a controversial man. He was given to all kinds of, undiplomatic statements. There was always this whiff around him of, his the man who's, sorry, I don't know his exact post, but somebody who was with him was under investigation. So I think, in fact, bringing him in was a mistake. Giving him the charge of the Northeast, which is so important, purely because he was an army man and could bring a different perspective on it, was also a mistake. And he has done nothing in the last 5 months to, instill confidence in his government, his prime minister, to the people of Northeast. What has he done? So I think removing him was a priority. So obviously somebody had to come in. And I think personally, the fact that Mr. Modi has still given everyone a chance, people who are non-performers, itself says that he wants to keep stability rather than, rock the boat right in the first 5 months.
Okay.
Otherwise, knowing his reputation, Mr. VK Singh would have been out by now.
Siddharth Varadarajan, you've heard Siddharth Bhatia say that Mr. Modi wants to maintain stability, not rock the boat. But the appointment of Mr. J.P. Nadda as health minister has brought forth howls of protest from Aam Aadmi in Congress. Now, Mr. Nadda was one of the people who was writing letters for the removal of the AIIMS chief vigilance officer, which resulted in the stopping or at least the stalling of corruption investigations. Is it not odd that the same man should have been given the health ministry?
I find this decision, quite honestly, completely inexplicable. Not only did the Prime Minister fail to act when there was ample documentation during Harshvardhan's stewardship of the ministry that the removal of Sanjay Chaturvedi was malified, it was done improperly, it was done with the aim of shielding guilty persons and protecting those who were under investigation. But we know that Mr. Harshvardhan was acting under pressure or in concert with J.P. Nadda. So to now remove Harshvardhan for whatever reason, I'm not getting into that, but to entrust this ministry into the hands of Nadda, who was instrumental in the ouster of an upright officer, to my mind is completely baffling. And the silence of the Prime Minister, the silence of his office in responding publicly to the well-documented accusations that have been made, is something that doesn't sit very well with all the public pronouncements that Mr. Modi made during the campaign and after.
Okay.
This is something that requires some kind of explanation. And you have the Medical Council of India vigilance person removed by Harshvardhan. This is a serious matter, and this is really quite shocking.
Siddharth Singh, you've heard it being called perplexing and baffling. You heard the silence of the Prime Minister after the howls of protest from Aam Aadmi in Congress, and now protests or at least concerns being expressed by the media. Surprising. Why is the Prime Minister silent? Why doesn't he clear the air?
Well, Karan, allow me a few minutes to answer this. And with all due respect to Siddharth Varadarajan, I really respect for his journalism. But Siddharth, I wish you had more in depth into what had happened. Let me now correct you, and you may like to go back to your own reporters and find few more facts. The CVO was not the job which was given to Mr. Chaturvedi. It was an additional charge. It was an additional charge given by the director of AIIMS, where the procedure to appoint a CVO is through a panel with the CVC sends or the health ministry sends, which never came through. And the CVC had written in 2012 that his removal should have happened. Now, these are all the appointment and discharge of Mr. Chaturvedi as the CVO relates to the UPA too, not to Mr. Harshvardhan or Nadda.
Okay.
Mr. Nadda, being the member of the Standing Committee of the Health, is within his rights. If a complaint comes, sending it to the Health Minister to inquire. I don't think as a member of Standing Committee that can be taken. So please correct your fact, and I do really respect you, but here you are absolutely without facts.
All
I'm
right.
sorry about it. Now coming on the General VK saying, wait. On coming on the General VK saying, Karan, the charges which is being insinuated on him for being demoted, if that be the charges are true or what you have said, certainly they are not. But if they are, let me be honest, the man should have been taken off from the ministry but that's not the case. So let's not get confused and ensue.
No, I think in your honesty, suddenly you've said more than you intended to, and you may live to regret it.
On the chief of the army staff, because that's a highly decorated place.
Let's not add. Hang on a second. No one is making insinuations against the chief of the army staff, least of all me. I'm simply pointing out that General V.K. Singh sent out tweets that were rather embarrassing to your own government at the time.
There is.
Now, let's not get stuck on that. I want to move on. I want to move on.
Happen through a journalist.
No, just a moment. It didn't happen through a journalist. Those were tweets sent out by General V.K. Singh himself. Let's be honest about it. Those were tweets sent out by General V.K. Singh. Let's not get caught in a contretemps between you and me. Ashok Malik, why do you think that when he was undertaking such a substantive, some would say almost sweeping reshuffle, he hasn't promoted anyone and the Prime Minister hasn't dropped anyone? Surely after nearly 6 months, there must have some one or two that he would feel deserve promotion and maybe one or two who deserve to be dropped. Why did he not take those two possibly tougher decisions? That Arun Jaitley, who has lost the defence portfolio, still has 3 credible and large portfolios. He's finance minister, he's corporate affairs minister, and now, in addition, he's become information and broadcasting minister. At a time when the finance ministership is a critical portfolio, major reforms need to be piloted, there's a lot of possible backlash or tension and resistance that he could face. Is it fair to burden the finance minister with 3 big portfolios?
Well, beyond the point, what can one say about this? This is the Prime Minister's prerogative. But yes, there are 3 very important portfolios. In fact, if you remember, Karan, the corporate affairs portfolio was created precisely to give it separate, independent, autonomous importance. Otherwise, it used to be part of another ministry. And this was created as a ministry because it was felt that there are a large number of issues there which require important underlining. And in fact, since this government has taken over, obviously that particular portfolio has not and could not have had the requisite importance. I think, having said that, everybody knows that Mr. Jaitley is more than competent to handle multiple portfolios. It's not a point of his competence. Perhaps it's also a reiteration of a signal that he is the de facto number 2. His colleagues in the BJP may not like it, but that seems to be the position since May. And the Prime Minister wants to probably underline that. Be that as it may not be an easily manageable collection of portfolios, and I think it will require something to be looked into because there are a whole host of issues arising in 3 portfolios. One sentence, Karan, the health ministry is a very important, vital ministry.
Yeah, let's not go back to health.
When you change somebody after 4 months, when you change after 4 months, you are giving another 5 months minimum for the next man to get his teeth in. So 1 year or 8 months is lost in a vital ministry like health.
I don't want to go back to health. I want to keep moving on. Siddharth Bhatia,
Abhishek, we lost 10 years.
No, Mr. Siddharth Singh, we're not going into health. Please, we're not going into health.
Rhetoric, that's
Siddharth Bhatia, I'm moving on. Siddharth Bhatia,
no, it's not rhetoric.
the 2 new gentlemen, please do not interrupt each other. Siddharth Bhatia, the 2 new entrants in the finance ministry are Jayant Sinha, who comes in as Minister of State. He's a Harvard graduate. Arvind Subramaniam, who's the chief economic advisor, who has a background with the IMF, with Harvard and Oxford. Does that combination now, as well as the fact that all the top secretaries have been changed, suggest that in fact a major push for reforms is likely? Is that the logic behind what we're seeing in the finance ministry?
You know, there is always, in fact, for the last 10 years or so, there has been this trend to install technocrats in the finance ministry. Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia and so many others have been technocrats. Shankaracharya was a technocrat, he's a pure economist.